Oh my gosh, Kacia, I'm so glad to have this conversation with you.
Oh, Lisa, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's such an honor. And I have to say, you have one of the most contagious, just enthusiastic, warm personalities of like anyone I've met. So
Oh,
you
thank you.
truly, yes, you're Colorado is lucky to have you here.
I love Colorado. I'm so happy to live here now. It's like definitely our vibe.
Good. Well, I'm so glad. And, I just wanted to have this talk with you. First, I mean, you have an amazing podcast, Empower Her, and you're all
Yeah.
about lifting women up and really being a cheerleader for others, living life fully, going for your dreams, like you say, calling your shot
Yeah.
and believing in what's possible. And you help others by your example and just guiding others to do the same. So for the women I serve in the fertility space, like
Yeah.
there's a lot they can learn from you, I think, in this talk. And so I just welcome you. And something you say a lot is you're living out a prior version of your dream. Like things are happening for
Yeah.
you. Can you bring us up to speed on like your current kind of state of mind and way of life right now? Like what's going on? It's so exciting. Like,
Yeah. Thank you so much. You're so sweet. I'm just so happy to be here. But yeah, so I had this very visceral gut feeling back when I was working in the corporate world that I wasn't doing the thing that was most aligned for me. And I tried to shove it down for a really long time, like pretending like I didn't want to feel like I wanted to do something else, because logically on paper, it made sense. Like I did the whole like go to college, get the corporate job, work my way up. But it just always didn't feel like it was aligned for me. But I then also felt guilty because on paper it did make sense. And I had this really good situation and it was better than a lot of other people's situations. And I almost felt like I like wanting more was selfish and that I was ungrateful or something. It was a really interesting time. Like I don't feel that way now, but that was almost like what sparked this interest in me getting into the entrepreneurial space in general, where I started my first business on the side of working a full-time corporate job. And it was honestly for like another stream of fulfillment, which is funny because ironically, fast forward many years now, I've helped so many podcasters that start podcasts for
Mhm.
another stream of fulfillment in their life to build community. Like, how it feels to build a community and to get to connect and impact and inspire women. But really like the whole entrepreneurial journey for me in general started with this very like visceral gut feeling in my body saying like, this is not the right path for you. You need to pick a different path and you need to get out of your own damn way and figure out how to actually do that. And it's catapulted into me then. I actually started in network marketing, which was my first business that I started on the side. That business ended up surpassing my full-time corporate income. And I was supporting my now husband while he was going to NYU dental school. And we were living in downtown New York City. And then after that, he became a dentist. And I was like, what else do I want to do? I don't want to do this network marketing thing anymore. It no longer feels aligned.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what to do. So I thought maybe I'll start a podcast and
Mhm.
be really transparent and create this community that's kind of like a come with me, let's figure out life together and keep it really focused on personal growth and just see what comes from it. And then start looking for problems that my community had that I could come up with solutions for, which turned into a lot of different programs and memberships. And now we do live events and all sorts of things have catapulted from that. But it's really just been following my intuition and then figuring out what I need to do to support myself to get out of my own way. Because when we're doing something new for the first time or we're entering a new season, it's so uncomfortable. And we have to figure out how to be on our own team, especially mentally. And that's what I've really built my business and brand and community around, this idea that like, you're in control of your thoughts. And like, if you're gonna make choices in your life that feel aligned for you, you're gonna have to really be the master of those. And here we are.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool. I mean, and do you feel like you always had this fire within you at a young age? Was it something you kind of just feel like this is a mindset I've carried with me through life?
Part of it was very just personality based, where I've always been really excited and a big visionary since I was really little. And then part of it was a learned coping mechanism because I grew up with someone who was an alcoholic.
Mhm.
And so I felt like it's almost like I could escape my own reality with my imagination and this resourcefulness and this deep confidence and belief in my ability to figure things out
Mhm.
is in me because of repetition and teaching myself how to have like tiny little wins so I can build confidence. But it's also out of necessity that it now at this stage of my life, I've dealt with a lot of the upbringing stuff, but I'm more so in this, like this season of, I've learned so much, and I believe that our life is a testimony of what's possible for other people. And I also am really comfortable with being transparent as I'm going through hard things when I'm in it. And I'm like, if I was gifted this ability that I can do that, then it's my responsibility to share that with other people that I could benefit. So now it's kind of changed, where back growing up, it was a necessity of needing to take care of myself to a certain degree in certain times. But then now it's more like this necessity of like, dang, I was gifted this vision and this heart for wanting to show up for people. I better do something with it, because I don't want to get to the end and be like, oh, wish I would have done something. So like, I want to do it now. And it's like a need, like a visceral need to show up.
Oh, I'm here for it. I mean, we need more people like you. You bring this warmth and have this zest for life. I swear, like people just want to be around you. So I know you get that a lot. You hear that. It's just,
thank you.
I mean, sweet. Incredible. And just, I think what qualities would you say? I think playfulness and fun are like two huge ones. And you are an example of like having a good time wherever you go. And I like to live in that mindset too, of just really always expecting good things to happen and for it, and asking for things you want, and just knowing that you can have this incredible life, right?
Yeah.
What
and
would you say?
Yeah. It's difficult sometimes, I think, for people that are in a season of life, or they're in a stage, or they're navigating something really hard, to understand that that's possible for them in this season, right? Or even to get themselves from, like, for example, I like to think of it like you're driving a stick shift car. If right now you're saying really negative things about your potential and about yourself and about your body and about your circumstances or about your marriage or about your friendships or whatever, like any aspect of your life, it's like you're going in reverse. And sometimes it feels difficult. And even for me, I can be triggering to some people because I am so optimistic and I'm like a reframe machine, that I can be triggering to people that are in that state because I feel like I'm in full go mode of optimism. But what I really always think about is, even when I'm in a season that's tough, that I believe you can kind of pop it into neutral and come up with like a neutral thought that's more supportive for you if you're not yet at the optimism lens. And whether it is circumstantial because of something like, especially your community navigating infertility, that's something I've never gone through personally. And we're just kind of moving into that season of life of wanting to start a family. But going through something so hard, it's almost like someone can feel like so polarizing of where you're at. And I think it's like giving ourselves grace as humans, but then understanding the responsibility that we have to take to find at least a neutral thought, instead of like, I'm going to be like this forever, or like my marriage is never going to improve, or I'm always going to be this financial situation, or like, oh, my body's always going to be like this. It's like, wait a second, what if you're wrong? What if you could just entertain the idea that maybe it can be better? Maybe you're not at the point where you can say, I know it's going to be better. Life is amazing. Like the world is your oyster. And like this state that I feel like I'm in now, we're like, what? Like anything is possible. But like, if you're not in that state, it's like finding something that's a little bit more neutral that you can actually believe. Because this is actually one of my pet peeves with the whole like affirmation idea, is like, I believe in affirmations for sure, but you have to actually believe it. So we have to have an understanding of like where we're at in our life and in our mindset, to make sure that we're giving ourselves the right amount like of fuel that we need. And to get to full like send of you being, popping it, going like full speed down the freeway, if you're right now in reverse, it's like, find what that middle ground is. And that's been really helpful for me, is I just take responsibility. So yes, I'm optimistic and I have this like happy-go-lucky approach of life, because I just believe that our days are numbered here and we don't know the count. What reinforced that is the fragility of life. I've lost 2 friends back when we were age 30. And my husband just lost his dad last year at only 64 years old. So it's like, the fragility of life is such a constant for me that I just want to enjoy the days that I have. Like I want to savor it all. But then I also understand that it's my responsibility, that I'm the only person that I'm going to live every single second of every single day with for the rest of my life. So I have to find a way to make the environment in my head conducive and supportive to how I want to show up in the world. And I just take that responsibility.
Thank you. You touched upon so many great things. And I think really bringing it back within ourselves, and touching upon this to my community about fertility struggles, because it is so difficult and more people are going through these challenges, and it's just not a fun place to be. Like, through this, and having a choice. like, I think there's something I just want to speak to about that. And you too, you took that ownership, you said responsibility back
Yeah.
within yourself. And we do have a choice. It is a
Yeah.
choice, to like see what kind of state of being do we want to focus on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to be led by the pain and the fear, or do we want to step into more of that kind of like joy and possibility? Like, I'm sure I trigger a lot of people too,
Yeah,
and triggers, like, I believe they're great teachers for us to look
for
into something
sure.
deeper within ourselves. So it's a reflection, for us, for the other person to kind of like go a little deeper.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And the fragility of life. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I too, I mean, my mom passed 4 years ago, and like, I know what you've gone through with Sina, and just life. We're thrown curveballs all the time,
Yeah.
we have uncertainty and heartbreak and loss and grief. And so just so many right now are in that waiting.
Yeah.
And what what gets you through hard times? I know you don't know those
Yeah.
fertility struggles personally, but can you share a little bit about, what gets you through some of those challenges?
Yeah. I think it's a lot about like whatever we're looking for, we're absolutely going to find.
Mhm.
And I am very intentional about, if I'm asking myself better questions, I'm going to get better answers. If I ask myself crappy questions, I'm going to get crappy answers. And what's hard when you're in a waiting season, whether it is for a promotion or for a job or for a baby or for anything, like I can't speak to the baby example, but I can speak to the waiting period when you have this distance between where you are now and where you want to go. And it can feel super overwhelming and daunting. Like, how am I going to get there in my career or my business or in my relationships? And
Mhm.
we've got to be so intentional about what we label that space. And I have to pick labels that actually serve me, because if I'm labeling this as like, how am I ever going to get there? And like, I'm not qualified for that big dream or that big vision yet. I have to then understand, like, this is my qualification period, so that when I get there, I look
Mhm.
back at the path that I took towards getting there and I realize I didn't waste it counting down, wishing that I was there. And because that time is going to pass anyways, like, why not have it be character building and resilience building and like serve us, and understand that we are literally equipping ourselves with the tools and the coping mechanisms and the habits and the relationships and the self-talk that we need to get there and actually maintain it. And obviously that doesn't apply to pregnancy, but it does apply to a lot of goals that we have in our life, where it's like, I want to get where I want to go, but I want to like the person that I am when I get there. And I want to feel like I can actually keep moving forward, because we live in this instant gratification Amazon Prime culture where we're taught that to get things more quickly, it means it's better. But I like to think to the opposite of that, where it's like, okay, how is this taking me longer actually serving me? Because I can't change a lot of the outcomes, but I can change my perception of the outcome. And even like back in end of 2019, we were talking about doing our first live event for my podcast, Empower Her. And I wanted to have hundreds of women together, and we were starting to plan it for 2020. Obviously, life threw a massive curveball. But what happened with that curveball being thrown was that I developed this beautiful membership that had like 2,500 women in it. And we connected and we did these like virtual happy hours back when everyone was doing virtual happy hours. And we connected in such a beautiful way that when we actually had 500 women in person, when I did my first event this past October, it was even more meaningful because people were so connected and grateful and present and grounded. And it was like nothing I could have ever imagined. And it's almost like I appreciate it more because it took me longer to get there. And I learned how to be able to handle myself. Like, I was able to stand in a line and meet every single person and have full send energy the entire time. I could handle the fact that like one of our surprise guests was my favorite entrepreneur on the face of the planet, Jamie Kern Lima. If you're not familiar, she, for people listening in, she started It Cosmetics. She sold it for $1.2 billion and became the first female CEO in L'Oreal's history. And every time she's asked to come to a board meeting or to be part of something, like even with Oprah, she always brings another woman to the table. And she is living, breathing proof of like what it's like to truly champion women. And she was a surprise guest speaker at our event. Something that 2 years ago, I would have never been able to even handle that, because I would have put her on this pedestal and I would have felt like I wasn't worthy of having someone like that there. And while I was blown away by her being there, I was like, yeah, my community deserves this. Like, I'm the person who can like have a call with Jamie and like get her there. Like I was like, I started to just have more confidence in myself. So, you
Oh my
know,
God.
and from a pregnancy perspective, it's really interesting for us to have this conversation right now because, you know, I've told you this, but like my husband, Cena, and I are like, okay, we're going to start trying to make a baby coming in. Like we're open to it starting February, because otherwise I could potentially, if I did get pregnant right away, could potentially have like a live birth at my next event. And that just doesn't feel like that'd be cute. So, so we are open to it. And I'm like, what's really interesting is going into something, knowing that there's some things that you can control, but a lot that you can't.
Right.
And you have no idea, could you get pregnant the first month? Could it take you a year? Could it take you 2 years? Could you do IVF? Could you you have no idea. So it's almost like you're committing to doing something that you have no idea what or when the outcome will be, but you're still buckled up for the whole ride.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is scary. So I want to just acknowledge that, because that's different than entrepreneurship, where I feel like I can control things more. I can launch things, I can start things, but like biology, and if you're going to get or, you know, stuff like that, it's like, I can't control any of that, you know?
Don't you think there's just so much magic in the unknown?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's the exciting part of like, how could you even have imagined Jamie Kern-Lima like showing up and surprising you? And just, you were that energetic match. And so much of what I speak of is energy and
Yeah.
vibration, and like, you get that, you know, and how we show up and our attitude, that is within our control. That is within our power.
For sure. For sure.
I think I hope more people just take note of this. And can you kind of shed light? Why do you feel like this is so important? Like energy, mindset, why does it matter? You get it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think there's this like vibration that you're putting out into the world that, to your point, it's like an energetic match, but there's also, for people that like have a little bit of like a logistical brain where they're like, or more analytical, where they're like, okay, that sounds great, but what does that actually mean? Right. Where I'm like, if you don't put out into the world what it is that you're working on in your life, your career, relationships, your family, whatever, then how is the universe going to know to give you that? But also, how are other people that are around you going to know how to support you or going to have a connection for you if you're not putting it out into the world? And I've noticed that a lot for even moving into 2023. I'm focusing a lot more on in-person with my own community and speaking at different events. And I've been talking more about it. And all of a sudden, out of the woodworks, things are coming into my life that I've like wanted for a long time. But it's like, if you don't call your shot and say it, then you don't know who you're connected with right now, that you might be one connection away from that thing that you need to start that business that you've been thinking about, or to get to that next level, or to meet that person that you're looking to meet, right? Or to find that friend that you've been looking for your whole life that really gets you and understands you. And I just think it's like, there's a lot that we cannot control in the world, but I think if you can control your energy and the way that you're showing up, I just think the universe will reciprocate that back to you. And if you're bold enough to call your shot on what it is that you're working on, I think there's a lot of people that want to help you that you maybe don't think about, that would love to support you, because you often have supported them too, you know?
I needed this message too. So, and you touched upon like setbacks, and I think setbacks can really be these blessings in disguise if we choose to see them that way. How, you know, there can be, when we have a pause, when we have something that maybe we didn't plan to go a certain way, and you've gone through a ton of pivots in your life, and one decision leading to another decision, or something didn't go maybe the way you thought or wanted, but it ended up being better than you could have imagined. Can you share a little bit on that?
Yeah, it's interesting because we think that we want to be happy all the time and we want to be crushing it all the time. But I don't know about you, but I never learn anything when I'm just crushing it. It's not that I don't appreciate it or that I don't savor it or that I'm not grateful for it, but I learn when things don't go according to plan. And that's when I build grit and resilience and resourcefulness, and also where I build the most amount of confidence. Because when you're cruising and things are going really well, you're not actively building your confidence because you're not learning how to trust your own ability to figure things out and how to tap into like that gritty part of you to get you through that season, or learning how to have like more depth of connection with your significant other, right? Going through when Cena, so for context, my husband Cena lost his dad to cancer and it came back. It was really aggressive. It was also at the time where my business was exploding at the exact same time. And my husband had just left dentistry and decided he wanted to get into real estate investing. We didn't even really know what that actually meant. But when we got a call that his dad's cancer was back, we went up to Seattle and we lived there for 3 months as his dad like slowly declined into hospice and eventually passed on the 4th of July. And after that season, what happened was Cena got so much anxiety because everything was unknown. We're like, his career was unknown. His dad was now gone. We were like 6 months out from getting married. He had no direction. He's a very like achievement, like go-getter driven type of person. And he didn't know, like a lot of things didn't make sense to him. And what I didn't anticipate during that season was we've been together for 14 years and he's always been this very stable force. Like he's done the linear path. I've always been, not always, but for the last 8 years, I've been an entrepreneur. I'm all over the place and I love it. But he's like this stable rock, right? Where he's this force that are like that balance really works well for us. Yeah. Well, when he wasn't stable and he has all of this anxiety, I'm like, I don't even know how to learn how to like self-soothe because I'm almost like codependently, like leaning on him to help me feel like I don't have any anxiety. So I started to get anxiety from him having anxiety and then me not having the stable force and not knowing how to support him. And what happened was it was a total shit show. Like it was so hard. It was such a like tough season in our marriage. Well, actually before we were married, it was leading up to right before we got married. And I was like, what in the world is going on? Like, I don't know how we do this. And it was the most beautiful gift. Now in hindsight, when I was in it, it was not a good situation.
Never
because
good.
We were like, but then you look back on with hindsight and I'm like, I have so much more compassion for how to support him. I'm so much more aware of like codependency patterns and how they could show up in my life. I'm so much more aware of like how to take care of myself and like really to like know how to go inward more. And I think if I would have kept going at this rate where my career was growing and things were like crushing it and Cena was in this lane and we were just kind of doing it all together, I don't think I would have learned. And how it's changed like the fundamental like respect that we have for each other as individuals and going into a marriage. And, you know, as we're starting to think about becoming parents, I'm like, that is the biggest gift, not his dad passing, obviously, but what we learned from that hard season that we couldn't have controlled, whether or not cancer and, you know, his dad got cancer, but we controlled what we made that mean afterwards. And a lot of what we made that mean was like legacy matters to us and like having time with our family matters to us. Like, let's figure out a way to like build this business where we do get to be present with our kids. And it like shook us a little bit. And I'm grateful for it now, because of what it taught me of how much I can rely on other people, but also how much I can really rely on myself, you know?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And it's so true. Like things that I believe too, as those who are in this hard season through fertility struggles and you want to feel whole, you know, like approaching motherhood from a space of like, be the mama now, like embody the energy and fill yourself up. So it's like you're overflowing right now. And I know you get it. Like you talked about kind of that self-regulation piece.
Yeah.
And things that help you stay in that calm, kind of grounded place. I know you go on your walks and you're always about like, you know, taking really good care of yourself and doing your bar classes and community, and just share with us some of your daily practices of how you kind of stay in that elevated vibe.
Yeah. I take inventory. One of the biggest contributors, like you touched on the community aspect, but I am so intentional about taking inventory of who I spend time with and the content that I'm consuming and like what I'm exposing myself to, because I can control that. And it's even like, how do I feel when I leave someone? Do I feel like I'm really lit up and excited, or do I feel like my energy was just like sucked out? And including even like, there are family members that I don't want to spend a ton of time with. And it's not like I don't care about them or I don't love them, but it's my job to show up as like the best version of me because other people benefit as a byproduct of that. And I deserve that. Just like anyone listening into this, like you deserve to live your best life, whatever that looks like for you. It's not going to look the same as anybody else's definition of success or your best life. But that means that sometimes people that don't understand your vision or that don't support you in a way that you need to be supported, like you might have to create some distance from those people. And the caveat to that is sometimes we want people to support us, but we don't tell them what support looks like. And we expect that they're mind readers. And that's really unfortunate because then it creates this like distance between you and that person that could have honestly been a really beautiful connection, whether it's a friendship or family or whatever. But we have to take responsibility for having that conversation because, for example, especially because I work with so many entrepreneurs, a lot of women are like, oh, but my significant other, he doesn't support this or she doesn't support this. And I'm like, okay, I hear you. And that's so frustrating that you have to feel that way. But what's the conversation been like when you explain to them like what the vision is and then what support actually looks like? Because I really do think that people want to support other people. But we have to make sure that they understand what that is, right? And for me as an entrepreneur, I actually have a couple of my really close girlfriends that are not entrepreneurs. Most of the people that I've made, so I grew up in the greater Seattle area. And after leaving that area, when we moved to New York, most of the friends that I made after I left are all in the entrepreneurial space, just because I was at that stage and I kind of attracted that in. But my girlfriends from Seattle are not entrepreneurs. None of them are. And I've always been like, if I want them to support me in my vision and my dreams, it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm showing up for them and getting excited about whatever season they're in, including most of them have kids already. And we haven't had kids yet. So I'm like, I have to get excited about what you're excited about and ask you questions about what your world is like. Nobody's life is more important, whether it's speaking on a stage to 10,000 people or you're pregnant with your first child. Like it's whatever it is, like, how can we support each other? And I think one of the practices that I have outside of like walking and doing all of these things to take care of myself is like, I try to be the friend that I want to have. I try to be the significant other that I want to have. I try to be even to my mom, like why our relationship has gotten so much better as we've grown up is like, I try and show up for her the way that I would want her to show up for me. So if I want her to care about what's going on in my world, I want to care what's going on in her world. And when I stopped thinking about like this role that someone has in your life and the expectations of a role, and I started taking people off their pedestal of what that means and started treating humans like humans and just showing up the way that I want it reciprocated to me, life got better and more fun and more fulfilling, honestly,
Completely. Oh my gosh. And just listening, I think to speaking our truth and being intentional, like with who we're surrounding ourselves with. I love that you touched upon that because I think so many can relate going through fertility challenges where, yes, we need to share with people like how to support us. You said it, and they can't read our mind, and setting those boundaries and kind of, it's a form of self-care, right? When we know how to support us and what we're going to tolerate and what we're not going to tolerate and who we want to be around, who we don't want to be around. I have these conversations with women a lot.
Well, I also think like as someone who's never struggled with fertility, what's been helpful for me, for my friends that have, is when they almost call out the elephant in the room. Cause now I feel really comfortable talking about it, but it's almost like, I know this is so hard and you might not even like know what to say, but we have that type of connection where they're like, I know you don't even know what to say. And just like you being here and like acting normal to me and sending me these weird gifts to make me laugh and being yourself, like that is helpful. That's all I need from you. It's almost like they're like, maybe, when you're in the midst of really grieving, it's hard for you to even know what you want. And I think that that's like giving yourself grace. If you're in a season right now where you're like, I don't even know what I want, right? Like, I don't want people to ask me, how can I help you? It's like, I don't have any bandwidth to even think about how can I support you? But there is, I think, a time, even like when we lost Ina's dad, like the grieving process of like, where you do know what you need. And then it's like not being afraid to ask, because I think friends do really want to support, but if they're not someone that's going to come to you and be like, hey, I know I don't know what to say. I know that you probably don't know what you need right now, but just know that I'm here. if they know that language, they can use that. But sometimes people do really want to support you, but they're not saying anything because they don't know what to say. And not that that's right, but that's because they haven't been told what to say, or they don't even know how to open up the conversation because they're like, holy crap, like this is so hard. What do I do? You know?
Oh gosh, so good. So good. You're just bringing the conversation out in the open. I think more and more are talking about it, and people are on their own, I say timeline, or just their personal time. When do you want to talk about it? Who do you want to share it with? As Brene Brown, who has earned the right to hear your story, and want to open up and be that vulnerable too. But there is so much power. I want to talk about sisterhood and community, and I know you're all about that.
Yeah.
I really hope women don't go through fertility challenges alone, and so many are. What would you say to someone who is kind of deep in the struggle, maybe feeling really like lost in a dark place, and to help her see what's possible, or just even exploring the idea of the power of sisterhood? Any thoughts on that?
I think it's not expecting that it has to be some big grandiose thing that you need to do, because I've always found, like, I think of even like confidence as a bucket, right? So like every single day that you show up and keep a promise to yourself, it's like you're putting a deposit into that bucket, like plop, 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 plop. And you feel better about yourself when you feel more confident, even if it's confidence, not like to go out there and like, do your thing, but like more so just to believe that you can handle this hard season. So if at the root of what you're doing right now, even if you're in a tough season, is to build confidence, we've got to figure out what is your success criteria to like win the day in this season. Because for example, prior to getting a phone call that Cena's dad's cancer was back, I could crush through, like I could do 6 podcast interviews. I could speak at an event, and then I would have so much energy. I could create content. I could do all these things. As soon as we got that call, everything changed. And if I would have had, because I was like, how do I support my husband going through the season? Like, what am I supposed to do? Oh my gosh, this bit, like, what do I do about my business? Where do I need to be? How do we get there? There was an apocalypse of rental cars when we were driving from Austin, where we lived, to Seattle. So my best friend and I drove a U-Haul. Like, it was like so much craziness, right? And I think if I would have had the same success criteria for that exact day, that was one day after the day previously, when I felt like I was on top of the world, I would have felt like I was failing, and I would have been digging unintentionally at my own confidence. So even if you're in a tough season, and like maybe prior to, like maybe you just experienced a miscarriage or something, right? And like you are devastated, understandably, or you're going through whatever emotions, feel whatever it is that you're feeling. Well, the day before you knew about this, you felt different. You should expect that you're going to feel different now. And if you need to, like, if one of your things for like winning the day is that you drink like half your body weight in ounces of water, and that's a big win for you, or you go walk outside for 10 minutes, or you have a tough conversation, or you ask for help, like that's a big win. So it's like teeing yourself up to put these deposits into your confidence bucket based off the season of life that you're in. Because so often I hear women, even like in the entrepreneurial space, it's like they're teachers and they have the summer off, and then they go back to work, and they also have 2 kids, and they're trying to build this business, and they're like, I can't show up the way that I used to. Now I feel like I'm failing. I'm like, because your season is different. Like, again, I've never had a baby, but like having a baby in your body versus out of your body is different responsibilities, right? So like, of course, like you, like understanding that, like if your season of life changes, or if you're navigating a tough season in your marriage right now, or you've got a lot of anxiety, or you're struggling with postpartum depression, or your in-laws are coming to town and that's giving you anxiety because they're crazy, or whatever it is that's going on in your world, it's like, what is your success criteria? What are the deposits that you're putting into your confidence bucket now to help support you? Because it's not going to look the same, maybe even day to day, depending on the season of life that you're in and what you're navigating through, And like, I can imagine, like with fertility, it's like, taking a pregnancy test, like hoping to get pregnant, you should expect that you're going to feel different around that time of the month versus when you're on your period and you're not pregnant or whatever, like from a very simple perspective, but the feelings are different based off the seasons,
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So many good things. And just honoring all the feelings, right? Honoring all of it, allowing yourself to feel it all.
And like, that's like the human experience, right? It's like, so often people will, message me on Instagram that listen to the podcast or whatever, and they're like, I wish I could just be as happy as you are all the time. And I'm like, I would never want to be happy all the time, because the contrasting lows like show you how like fulfilling the highs are, the wins are, the like, you need that full spectrum. Like that's what being a human is. And I love how you talk about this so much, Lisa, of like just all of the emotions of it, because like there's nothing wrong with you if you're crying and then you're happy and like you feel like you suck and then you feel like you're on top of the world all in the same hour. Like that's just part of being a human sometimes, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Thank you for touching upon that. And the depth of the pain that we experience, it almost enhances our capacity to love even more.
Wow.
It's, we've all gone through so many difficult things, right? Loss and grief. And if I hadn't experienced fertility challenges going through IVF and at the same time seeing my mom's health going downhill and just all these, I don't think I could show up the way I do now. It's given me an opportunity to show up more fully, more vulnerably, have more courage to share my story so openly. I mean, never did I imagine I'd be stepping into this role as a coach and helping women going through IVF, but it's like this calling to my heart. And I know you know that feeling too, that you need to speak up. These things we've gone through in our life have led us to this place where we want to do something big with our lives. And I'm like, this pain has all been for a greater purpose that I could never have planned for.
Yes. And it just makes you, at least for me, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but I think you'll get this, is when I'm going through something hard, even if it's not something as hard as like navigating fertility, right? But it's something like even just a challenge. When I recognize that it's not just about me, it makes me feel like I've got more fuel to get through it, because I recognize that when I'm going through something hard, because I've committed to, for me, it's sharing with my platform and with my friends and with people that I'm connected to. But even for women listening into this that aren't podcasters or don't have businesses like you and I do, it's like what you're going through and what you learn is also going to serve somebody else. Even if it's just like local, your community locally or your friends or your family or whatever, if you choose to look at it that way.
Yeah.
Not while you're in it and you're trying to make sense of it all, but like later there will be a future version of you that will see the lessons that couldn't have been exposed to you, that you couldn't have learned if you didn't go through that thing, and that other people will benefit because of your willingness to share it. And I think about that so often when I'm just navigating like weird seasons of life where I'm like, this is not just about me. And that actually doesn't feel like pressure that's suffocating or like an elephant on my shoulders, but it feels more like fuel to be like, you got to figure this out because other people are counting on you to figure this out. And I like that amount of pressure and going through life that way.
Like you've shared, like it's our kind of our responsibility, right? Like you've been placed this gift you talk about on your heart. If you have this gift, like to speak up on this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because somebody needs your example.
Totally. Oh my gosh. Well, you're so inspiring. You're doing so many incredible things. Talk about your Empower Her conference that you had, the live event, and you have one coming up next year in Denver, which I want to be at.
Oh, I just think there's a lot of power for, women being in community together, whether that's women that are listening into this podcast and just feeling like they get to connect and like listen into a conversation where it feels like we're all girlfriends chatting, but like, when you take it to the next level and you're with people in person, it's just different. When you get to hug people and you get to see that you're not the only one that's navigating whatever it is that you're navigating, and, like other ambitious go-getter women. So I wanted to curate more experiences of getting women together in person. I've done a lot of online and I've done a lot of Zoom and memberships and programs and all of that stuff, but I'm actually moving away from a lot of that to just focus on in person, whether it's like meetups for our podcast community all across the country, retreats that we're going to be hosting, as well as, like you mentioned, Empower Her Live, which is our big annual event. I think I'm going to call my shot on having 800 women there in Denver. Yes. And it's September 22nd through the 24th. Tickets are not even on sale yet. But keep it on your radar. If you want to come to Denver, you want to connect with us, you want to be around a bunch of like-minded women. It's been like the coolest. Doing the event in October was exactly what we touched on at the beginning of this episode, is like, there's going to be a future version of you that's going to look back on you now and be so grateful that you didn't give up. And so grateful that you kept on going, even like when it didn't really make sense, because being in person with 500 women that listen into this podcast from all across the country, 60%, maybe even 70% of the audience had never been to a personal development conference ever. And they were there in the audience. It was the highlight of my career thus far. was
Well,
that
the
weekend.
energy you bring, the person you are, this is who you are. So,
Oh, I love you.
and I
Thank
want to
you.
look back on this talk, we're having this here before 2023 starts, but I feel like this next year is going to be like in-person events. And I too, and thank you for being the kind of inspiring person you are. I want to show up and do more in-person events and gather people in person. Like that's so important in the fertility space.
Oh yeah. It's so needed. And I think it's so powerful that you are willing to talk about this topic that's so needed in the world. Cause yes, more people are starting to share about it, but like, as I'm like starting to read about, like, this sounds so dumb because I'm 33 years old, but like, I'm starting to read all these books about like prepping your body for pregnancy, and I'm taking my prenatals and I'm like doing all this stuff. And I'm like, fertility, like miscarriages even are so common. Like 1 in 3 pregnancies. Yeah. 1 in 4. I'm like, it's so common. Like, so, and I was even going through like my bridesmaids in my head of how many of them have had miscarriages. And I was like, it's just so common that it's like, we have to have community with other women that are going through this because it's such a unique experience. And like, it's unique in that it's your own personal experience, but it's a shared experience in that like grieving and having connection to other people while you're going through something hard, like it lessens the load,
Oh my gosh. Do you have a word that you're leaning into for 2023 or any kind of like, I don't know.
So I've never used this word. I swear to you, I've never used this word in a sentence my entire life, but I was at an event and the speaker was like, what's your word? And I've heard that asked like 800 million times. And I was just pick like some sort of word, but this word flourishing, like as a verb came in. And I was like, I don't know. I just feel like this is like my flourish season. Like, I just feel like I'm stepping more into this more, like I've always been really feminine, but even more just like more fluid season, and like not coming from a place of like, I'm like doing a lot more energetic work, and I'm not coming from this place of coping because I'm the girl that can handle the hard thing because of how I grew up, but instead like really leaning into community, really just like, flourishing, like figuring out like how to support my body in different ways, and like just how to be more graceful with myself while still chasing these big dreams.
And I think anyone who's listening into this right now, like the word of just flow, ease, like the fluid kind of like feminine flow that you're talking about, that's really key as we're going through these challenges, right? Like not forcing and trying to swim upstream and doing more. A lot of people are doing so many things, taking all the supplements and doing all the external supports, but it's like really about this inner softening. Going downstream. Let's just have fun and flow a little bit more than like fighting through this, right?
Yeah. Oh, I love this. I love this conversation.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. So yes, I'll link all of your information, but do you want to share any like tidbits of where people can find you? And
thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. So my podcast, is called Empower Her. It's a Monday, Thursday podcast. I love listening or like just like hearing people's feedback that listen into the show. And for anyone that listens into this, like, this, Lisa, as a podcaster, but it's so helpful if you tag it on social media or send Lisa or I a DM, because you're having these conversations and you pretend like you're having it with somebody else, but it's like, it's really helpful if we know who you are, right? Who's listening in and who is impacted. But so my favorite social media platform is Instagram. It's Kacia Ghetmiri on Instagram. I'm pretty consistent over there, and just happy to connect in whatever way feels aligned. So thank you so much.
I'm so grateful for you. Love you.
Thank you, girl. Love you.
Bye.